I mean, obviously, it's a huge honour. I can't tell you when I was longlisted, through the selections, I was like, well, this is wonderful, but I will never win. I really didn't believe that I would ever win. I think for any author, being recognised by such a prestigious prize is amazing. In another country, even more so, because it's almost like they're adopting you. It's a different sort of esteem, I think. But also for me personally, I don't know if you know, but my first novel is very autobiographic. So I grew up in council houses. Went to schools that weren't great. So the idea that I went from that to collecting that award is, I said all of yesterday, I was like, I'm so happy and I'm so overwhelmed. And overwhelmed is probably the closest description I've come to it. But it's really, the biggest thing for me is that hopefully what it shows is, by the jury awarding the prize to a book about working class people, people aren't really spoken about that much in literature. Oh no, of course, the ethos of the Femina is really important to me as well. How lovely to be awarded a prestigious prize, but even more so if it follows your own personal passions and ethics as well, I think. I don't know if you read Marilyn Robinson's Lila, and I read that after I wrote this. I mean, it came out well after, but for me that was like the perfect example of that tender, gentle love story. So even though it wasn't the model for that book, it was a book that I saw what I hoped to achieve with Thirst. Absolutely perfect, done perfectly. My own influences, Janice Galloway the Scottish writer, has been a huge influence. Toni Morrison, Anne Tyler, Truman Capote. Books, I guess the books that I was always drawn to when I was growing up were books with a real tenderness at their heart. Not I hope, never sentimentality. I grew up just using libraries. We didn't buy books in our house because they're expensive. So I literally just picked indiscriminately. Jeanette Winterson, another of my like real idols, said that she just read her way right the way through from A to Z, and I just went along going. So I ended up reading, very commercial books sometimes, and then very literary books other times. And I wonder if maybe what I write is a mix of literary and slightly more, sometimes more commercial things.
Your character, Alina? Yes. How do you say that?
Alina is how I say it. I'm sure Alina. The Russians would correct me. Yeah, no, I mean, I think for people from a background where the thing about being poor is that you lack opportunities, so your horizons are so narrow, and books allow you to open your horizons and imagine what might be and help raise your aspirations. It's impossible to try and achieve things if you don't believe that they're ever within your reach, but I think books give you a window into what might be possible, and so I'm always trying to. Well, actually, it's not intentional. I don't think I'll put a little bit about reading in here, but I think because it's been such a fundamental part of my life, it's inevitable. It sneaks its way into stories. So I was living in Hackney in East London, and Hackney's a really interesting place in that it's always been very working class, a big immigrant community, so Orthodox Jews, Turkish and Kurdish, Afro-Caribbean, Eastern European, a big gay community that moved there, and artists and musicians, and so what you have is this like really thriving place. But all of those people are existing really in harmony. It's quite extraordinary that many different communities, very strong communities, can exist. And so I was living there, and I loved that place, And every time I went down to the street, I was like, there's so many stories. And so I was like, well, I have to write about this at some point. And I knew I wanted to write a love story. Love stories, I feel, have become unfashionable in literary fiction in some ways. So what I wanted to do was write a love story that felt honest. So it had all the hard parts as well, and the parts where you're never quite sure what is need and what is love, and where the dynamics are in terms of power, that constant shifting power dynamic. And then the characters came to me. Dave was based on a man who lived opposite me, and he'd planted a rose bush in this like sort of wasteland outside of his flat, and he'd come out every day and water it and then throw bread for the birds. But he was like, he had a skinhead, he was like really built, and I was like, he really looked like he'd, you know, thump you if you looked at him the wrong way. And then he's doing this very sweet, gentle thing. And so I started thinking, first of all I thought, I hope he's not lonely, and then I thought, wouldn't it be nice if he met someone? And Elena, I wish I had as good an origin story for her, but actually I don't know where she came from. She sort of fully formed. I was living in London though, and London is full of girls like Elena. Yeah, no, of course. Thank you so much for noticing that. Not many people have, actually. It's delightful for me. Dave and Elena, I think, on the face of it, are completely different. They come from, you know, like literally different countries, and they have different experience that shaped them. But at core, they're the same, and that's really a lot of what I was trying to do, especially with the Hackney and Siberia scenes, was show the commonalities, like that sort of universality. That if you grow up poor, then you want things, and you know you probably might not get them, but you'll take a chance to try and get them, and that that can have repercussions for your adult life. And really, like, that's what, because they seem, I think, on the face of it, an unlikely couple, but at core they're the same. You know, they're decent and they want to be decent, even though life has treated them badly. And what the reader has to hope, I think, is that they can overcome all of the obstacles and all the things that pull them apart because of those sort of shared values and that shared experience of wanting something and probably being denied it. Yeah, so I was trying to think of a way to express that feeling of being in love and wanting it desperately, you know, having it just in your reach but not quite. So it's the idea of constantly needing and wanting, and actually all of the characters in the book, even Fadir and Andri, who are, you know, terrible terrible people really, they all desperately want something. Yes, yeah, no, exactly, yeah, that sense of needing and wanting, and the colour de l'eau, you might have noticed, comes from Dave's description of her eyes, which is that she, you know, like when you're in love, you notice details that nobody else would, and things that are charming and wouldn't be charming perhaps to other people suddenly become fascinating to you. So. Completely, yeah. I just contributed a chapter to a novel on writing novels for people learning or teachers, and I wrote a whole chapter on details. It's a massive part of my process. For me, those little details are the things which I think you said, they underpin the reality. They take the reader there. You know, if you have the tactile feeling of a tabletop or the taste of a sip of coffee on your tongue, then all of a sudden the reader is conjured right there with you. So I've always, and also I think that's something that I'm interested in, those minute details, and trying to find the most interesting ones to portray what I'm trying to portray at any given time. So for Hackney, it was relatively easy to find those details because I was living there and I'd been absorbing those details for years and years. But when I knew how to write the Siberia sections, I actually did go to Siberia. I spent a month there from Moscow to Irkutsk, and lots of my work was, ostensibly it was to go see the sorts of towns where women are trafficked from, to see where Ellie might have come from. But lots of my work was like looking at the colour of old women's sandals, or I don't know, going to the park and looking at the shape of the leaves or whatever. So I spent a lot of work trying to like really focus in on those little details that would make Siberia come alive to a reader. For me, it anchors some truth in the book. I'd never thought of them that way. I was really fascinated. I pretty much always live in, I travel quite a lot now, so I've come from Berlin, I'm going back to London. And in big cities, I'm really interested in how we can all be crushed together in the city, but none of us are looking at each other and people are just drifting through their lives. So I was really interested in those isolating people just sort of sleepwalking through their lives, pretty much just ignored by society, ignored by the people around them. And so it was very deliberate, and all writers are outsiders, I think. So a lot of I personally identify with the outsiders, as someone who's pretty much constantly in exile from where I grew up. So I've only written 2 books, but my third that I've just sent to my literary agent is kind of the same, in that it explores things that I personally am very interested in. And for me, the 2 things I was interested in when I was writing this was love, or the concept of love and what that really is when you get down, and then home and exile. The idea that what is home? Can a person be home? Can you be your own home, or does it have to be where you come from and who part of your genetic makeup? And exile, the idea that you can be left. And perhaps part of that is that I was saying to someone yesterday, the communities I grew up in, I can't really go back to. I've moved too far away from them. So I could go back, and in fact I do go back, and I do occasionally work with creative writing classes with young people, or but I will never belong there, I'm not. So I'm effectively in exile from where I came from, but I also don't belong in the new world that I find myself in. So I'm always going to be very interested in that, the people who exist in the spaces between homes and places. That Hackney, in particular Hackney, because I think that should be a character in itself. Hackney's colluding to make them fall in love, it's and Siberia likewise, and I really I'm fascinated by the world that we inhabit, and I think it's very revealing how we interact with those places and the environment around us. So I was really interested in trying to explore that, and also I really Hackney's such a fascinating place. I wanted to capture it, I want to put it on the pages. It's changed like everywhere. I don't know if Paris is the same, but London's changing so fast all of the time, and I want to capture at this amazing, exciting time. I think it's true of all adults, even if you've had a relatively happy life, that we all carry this sort of handprints of all the things that have gone before us. And so one of the things I was trying to look at with Dave and Elena is whether or not, even after terrible things have happened, you can still find a way to love and make yourself vulnerable and find a way to hope for happiness. One of the reasons why I reveal that back history slowly throughout the book is because that is how we learn about each other when we're in love. You find out things slowly. So the reader is in a way also in that sort of very vulnerable state where they're desperately wanting Dave and Elena to be together, but slowly realising that they might not be able to.